I have received a lot of requests to explain the grid concept separately, and specifically if it's possible in 3D. So here we go. We're going to take the head of the already familiar head of Nefertiti and deal with that in three-dimensional space. To begin with, the grid is a framework of spaced bars that are parallel to each other or cross each other and usually equally spaced. But this is two-dimensional language. In reality, nothing is flat, including our grid. To prove that and to realize that, we're going to do next. We are taking familiar image of the Nefertiti, which is sculpture, and we're going to apply the grid so we can approach the proportions which are visible. So the first is obvious, and I'm making very clear, I'm working only with what I can see, not with what I know. So the first obvious thing is to separate it in half, because I can see that that's where the half starts, and I'm going to write the half up and down, and that is the middle line. The next thing which I can see is where the edge of the nose is, and that's the line we're going to run again, and not surprisingly, it shows you the beginning of the eye, which proves again that the space between the eyes equals to the eye, and that's how it starts. Not closer to the nose, but precisely the same level. The next thing which I obviously can see is the end of the eye, and that's the next thing which I'm going to mark with the vertical line. And the last thing which I can see is the edge of the form going away from me to the side. So this is the edge of the form, and that's all I can see, and that's all I can see. I can mark the edge of the mouse too, just in case we might need that. But that's the only parts of the face which are visible, and actually I can see, rather approach it like, oh, I know where things are. So the second thing, we're going to take a red for the horizontal lines, and we're going to turn, let's finish it on the front. We're going to take the yellow, and we're going to make a horizontal lines on the front, the ones which we see. So the first, obviously, we can see is the horizontal line connecting the eye side, right? That's the line. So this is where the eye line goes. The next one is where we started, is the tip of the nose, right? Let's do that tip of the nose line. Then where the nose ends, so we can arrange that, because usually it's where the ear, yep, you see, right where the ear is supposed to be. Here it's lost on the right side. And then is the obvious part, is where the middle of the mouth is. We can mark the lips if we want, but let's not do that so it's not too many lines. And then where the edge of the chin, where the, again, end of the head front ends and it goes inside. This is the only thing we can see here. Now we're going to mark everything on profile. So far it is a flat approach, which is all very familiar to us all. Vertical lines and horizontal lines on the image are intersect. They're not equally spaced. They spaced in relationship to the form of the specific head we're looking at. So the next thing, we're going to turn it in profile and see what happens with those lines on a profile view. So let's do that. We're taking the head and we're slowly turning it into profile. To begin with, the beautiful thing happens to us. You can see that all what's used to be straight blue line is actually not straight anymore, because it belongs to the profile of the plane it actually sits on. So let's put the red lines of the vertical lines which we see here, and so we can arrange this into the final grid. So we have the front grid and we have a side grid. So on the side, what we can see is, let's say, where the nose ends. If we're going to mark that, it's not going to do anything, it's space. So we can see where the tip of the lip is. So you see that? There's nothing except the lip. So let's see where the chin ends. So if the chin is behind both lips and the nose. The next, again, we saw the edge of the nose. Let me zoom a little so you can see better. Okay. So the next thing we can see, that was the edge of the nose. Let's redo that so you can see. So this is the edge of the nose. That's a straight line. That's the tip, the end of the mouse, right? That's the tip of the eye. You see the very end of the eye right there? Let's go to the edge of the eye. That's the end of the eye, as we remember, as we saw it. Oops. And then this is where the beginning of the turn from the front to the side. That's the edge of the jaw, which we saw. And that was it. There's nothing else matters on this side. And there's nothing else we can see. So again, this is pretty much straightforward rectangular connections. So we can see that the ear is very much aligned with the bottom of the nose, but it doesn't end, the broken at least part of it doesn't end where the nose starts, but it ends on the bottom of the eye. So all these interconnections becomes very obvious right away. How far from the tip of the ear to the, let's say, to the eye. You can see that distance. You can see that distance very clear now, right? How far from here to here. So this is the reason for the grid. So now the magic starts. So now we have to look at this as a three-dimensional object. So for that, we're going to zoom a little bit out, and then we're going to start turning the whole object, the whole head, a little bit to the side. Very slowly, but slowly we're realizing that there is nothing actually straight. There is nothing flat. Every part of this face is covered with some funny trails of us walking across the surface. Again, one more time, this is the illustration of that there is nothing flat. No straight line is flat as long as it belongs not to the two-dimensional plane, but to the three-dimensional head, or any three-dimensional form for that reason. So in this case, we can see that even the elusive yellow line, which still looks pretty much straight, it's actually not the minute we do this. The minute we look at it from the bottom, we're realizing that even the yellow line, which used to be in two planes horizontal, it's not horizontal at all. It follows so even when we look at this head in 3/4 from the bottom, you realize that the actual used to be flat plane is not flat plane. Nothing is flat. And that one more time proves to us that we have to be extremely careful, understanding that the distance which we see as flat on a plane is actually three-dimensional trail, let's say, over the landscape on a very complex form, on a very complex design of the form, and it depends on every specific person. That's why I'm asking to look for those planes, to look for those stages, to look for those turns before making any decisions. And approaching this, let's say, that's why we call it liquid grid, you're realizing a very interesting thing that if you look carefully at those, let's take another color, like a green, so I can walk with that green, draw with that green so you can see. If you see, there's a very funny things happens. It shows you different width of those lines. In reality, what it tells us that that plane at that distance is the flat plane. That means if we slice as we sliced with the red straight away from us, this whole width of red shows you that they are in the same plane. So having this multi-CAT scan, let's say, of slices, you can create a built model from any material. So that's what CAT scan does, what the lasers do today. But what's important for us is to see the depth behind elusive straight line. Nothing is flat in a three-dimensional world. Do not forget that, please. It's fascinating. I love that. I have been a sculptor longer than I can remember. I have over 13 years of Russian academic training, MFA, and apprenticeship under my dear teacher Isaac Brodsky. I am very excited to share everything I have learned over the years with you in this course. Sculpting is creating a new form of life, not a copy of existing world. Sculpture is the witness to that experience. In the first week, you will learn how to see as a sculptor. You will draw, you will walk the line to learn what you see, and you will sculpt what you have learned. In week 2, I will introduce the box concept. This is the foundation for your freedom sculpting any figure in any space. This will be the road to understand and to succeed in sculpting not the surface, but the core of new reality. Week 3 will be all about anatomy, but not the anatomy you expect. You will learn about joints, mechanics of the joints, muscles, and their place in space. I will simplify the complex, vast anatomy to a concentrated minimum any sculptor will ever need. I will illustrate it in 2 and 3-dimensional form. Week 4 will be our victory room. You will be taking all the knowledge that you accumulated in these previous weeks, and you will sculpt the new world, seen and created by you. Sculpting loose is misunderstood. From now on, you will be sculpting unconstrained, liberated from common standards. Your sculpture will have a new truth and a new reality.